Grand Rising, my dear ones. This is your girl, Apprentice Queen. I say my loves. I hope all is well with the family today. I'm coming at y'all with a little informative video by Manly P. Hall. Well, this was a book that was written by him, The Lost Keys of Freemasonry by Manly P. Hall. I have no rights or claims to this content. This is solely for educational purposes under the Fair Use Act, code number 107. I say my loves. Give y'all a little taste of what everybody be wondering about. The Lost Keys of Freemasonry by Manly P. Hall for educational purposes.
Freemasonry, though not a religion, is essentially religious. Most of its legends and allegories are of a sacred nature. Much of it is woven into the structure of Christianity. We have learned to consider our own religion as the only inspired one, and this probably accounts for much of the misunderstanding in the world today concerning the place occupied by Freemasonry in the spiritual ethics of our race. A religion is a divinely inspired code of morals. A religious person is one inspired to nobler living by this code. He is identified by the code which is his source of illumination. Thus, we may say that a Christian is one who receives his spiritual ideals of right and wrong from the message of the Christ, while a Buddhist is one who molds his life into the archetype of morality given by the great Gautama, or one of the other Buddhas. All doctrines which seek to unfold and preserve that invisible spark in man named spirit are said to be spiritual. Those which ignore this invisible element and concentrate entirely upon the visible are said to be material. There is in religion a wonderful point of balance, where the materialist and spiritualist meet on the plane of logic and reason. Science and theology are two ends of a single truth, but the world will never receive the full benefit of their investigations until they have made peace with each other, and labor hand in hand for the accomplishment of the great work, the liberation of spirit and intelligence from the three-dimensional prison house of ignorance, superstition, and fear. That which gives man a knowledge of himself can be inspired only by the self, and God is the self in all things. In truth, he is the inspiration and the thing inspired. It's been stated in Scripture that God was the Word, and that the Word was made.
And now you see, everybody talk down on the Masons. See what I'm saying? That's why I'm giving y'all this little bit. So, I already know, 'cause like I said, I'm Eastern Star. I come from a family of Masons and Eastern Stars. They already had the Jews to the key of life. That's why people hated them so much, because they knew too much. They wanted to be on the inside to see what they were doing. I always talking about, oh, they worship devils and this and that and going on. That's a bunch of shit. I can testify to that. People always demonize what they don't understand.
Flesh. Man's task now is to make flesh reflect the glory of that Word, which is within the soul of himself. It is this task which has created the need of religion. Not one faith alone, but many creeds, each searching in its own way, each meeting the needs of individual people, each emphasizing one point above all the others. 12 fellow craftsmen are exploring the 4 points of the compass. Are not these 12 the 12 great world religions, each seeking in its own way for that which was lost in the ages past, and the quest of which is the birthright of man? Is not the quest for reality in a world of illusions the task for which each comes into the world? We are here to gain balance in a sphere of unbalance, to find rest in a restless thing, to unveil illusion, and to slay the dragon of our own animal natures. As David, king of Israel, gave to the hands of his son Solomon the task he could not accomplish, so each generation gives to the next the work of building the temple, or rather, rebuilding the dwelling of the Lord, which is on Mount Moriah. Truth is not lost, yet it must be sought for and found. Reality is ever present, dimensionless, yet all-prevailing.
What's up, Cherry B?
Man,
How you doing this
creature of
morning, love?
attitudes and desires, and servant of impressions and opinions, cannot, with the wavering unbalance of an untutored mind, learn to know that which he himself does not possess. As man attains a quality, he discovers that quality and recognizes about him the thing newborn within himself.
If you can hear it
Man
good,
is born with
put
eyes,
a 1 in the chat.
yet only after long years of sorrow does he learn to see clearly and in harmony with the plan. He is born with senses, but only after long experience and fruitless strivings does he bring these senses to the temple
No problem,
and lays them as offerings upon the altar of the Great Father, who alone does all things well and with understanding. Man is, in truth, born in the sin of ignorance, but with a capacity for understanding. He has a mind capable of wisdom, a heart capable of feeling, and a hand strong for the great work in life, truing the rough ashlar into the perfect stone. What more can any creature ask than the opportunity to prove the thing he is, the dream that inspires him, the vision that leads him on? We have no right to ask for wisdom. In whose name do we beg for understanding? By what authority do we demand happiness? None of these things is the
I always
birthright
want
of
me
any
to be
creature,
nervous.
yet all may have them,
You know,
if they
I try
will
to support
cultivate
those that
within
support
themselves
me.
the thing that they desire. There's no need of asking, nor does any deity.
No, I'm bringing this. See, because I see everybody wanting to try to demon for years and years and years. People always want to talk bad about the Masons and stuff like that, and it's not only what people waking up to now. The Masons already knew for centuries. They were not. They're them devil worshippers. They already know all this going on now. People waking up now, becoming conscious. Masons already knew it for centuries, my love. They already knew all of this. This is why I'm broadcasting this. Because I'm an Eastern Star. My father was a Master Mason. My mother was an Eastern Star. My brothers and nephews, they Masons. I come from a family of Freemasonry.
Bow down to give man these things that he desires. Man is given by nature a gift, and that gift is the privilege of labor. Through labor, he learns all things. Religions are groups of people gathered together in the labor of learning. The world is a school. We're here to learn, and our presence here proves our need of instruction. Every living creature is struggling to break the strangling bonds of limitation, that pressing narrowness which inhabits vision and leaves the life without an ideal. Every soul is engaged in a great work, the labor of personal liberation from the state of ignorance. The world is a great prison. Its bars are the unknown, and each is a prisoner until, at last, he earns the right to tear these bars from their moldering sockets and pass, illuminated and inspired, into the darkness, which becomes lighted by that presence. All peoples seek the temple where God dwells, where the Spirit of the great truth illuminates the shadows of human ignorance. But they know not which way to turn, nor where this temple is. The mist of dogma surrounds them. Ages of thoughtlessness bind them in. Limitation weakens them and retards their footsteps. They wander in darkness, seeking light, failing to realize that the light is in the heart of the darkness. To the few who have found him, God is revealed. These, in turn, reveal him to man, striving to tell ignorance the message of wisdom. But seldom does man understand the mystery that has been unveiled. He tries weakly to follow in the steps of those who have attained, but all too often finds the path more difficult than he even dreamed. So he kneels in prayer before the mountain he cannot climb, from whose top gleams the light which he is neither strong enough to reach nor wise enough to comprehend. He lives the law as he knows it, always fearing in his heart that he has not read aright the flaming letters in the sky, and that in living the letter of the law he has murdered the Spirit. Man bows humbly to the unknown, peopling the shadows of his own ignorance with saints and saviors, ghosts and specters, gods and demons. Ignorance fears all things, falling, terror-stricken before the passing wind. Superstition stands as the monument to ignorance, and before it kneel all who realize their own weakness, who see in all things the strength they do not possess, who give to sticks and stones the power to bruise them, who change the beauties of nature into the dwelling place of ghouls and ogres. Wisdom fears no thing, but still bows humbly to its own source. While superstition hates all things, wisdom, with its deeper understanding, loves all things, for it has seen the beauty, the tenderness, and the sweetness which underlie life's mystery. Life is the span of time appointed for accomplishment. Every fleeting moment is an opportunity, and those who are great are the ones who have recognized life as the opportunity for all things. Arts, sciences, and religions are monuments standing for what humanity has already accomplished. They stand as memorials to the unfolding mind of man, and through them man acquires more efficient and more intelligent methods of attaining prescribed results. Blessed are those who can profit by the experiences of others, who, adding to that which has already been built, can make their inspiration real, their dreams practical. Those who give man the things he needs, while seldom appreciated in their own age, are later recognized as the saviors of the human race. Masonry is a structure built upon experience. Each stone is a sequential step in the unfolding of intelligence. The shrines of Masonry are ornamented by the jewels of 1,000 ages. Its rituals ring with the words of enlightened seers and illuminated sages. 100 religions have brought their gifts of wisdom to its altar. Arts and sciences unnumbered have contributed to its symbolism. It is more than a faith. It is a path of certainty. It is more than a belief. It is a fact. Masonry is a university, teaching the liberal arts and sciences of the soul to all who will attend to its words. It is a shadow of the great Atlantean Mystery School, which stood with all its splendor in the ancient city of the Golden Gates, where now the turbulent Atlantic rolls in unbroken sweep. Its chairs are seats of learning. Its pillars uphold the arch of universal education, not only in material things, but also in those qualities which are of the spirit. Upon its trestle boards are inscribed the sacred truths of all nations and of all peoples, and upon those who understand its sacred depths has dawned the great reality. Masonry is, in truth, that long-lost thing which all peoples have sought in all ages. Masonry is the common denominator, as well as the common divisor, of human aspiration. Most of the religions of the world are like processions. One leads, and the many follow. In the footsteps of the demigods, man follows in his search for truth and illumination. The Christian follows the gentle Nazarene up the winding slopes of Calvary. The Buddhist follows his great emancipator through his wanderings in the wilderness. The Mohammedan takes his pilgrimage across the desert sands to the black tent at Mecca. Truth leads, and ignorance follows, in his train. Spirit blazes the trail, and matter follows behind. In the world today, ideals live but a moment in their purity, before the gathering hosts of darkness snuff out the gleaming spark. The Mystery School, however, remains unmoved. It does not bring its light to man. Man must bring his light to it. Ideals coming into the world become idols within a few short hours, but man, entering the gates of the sanctuary, changes the idol back to an ideal. Man is climbing an endless flight of steps, with his eyes fixed upon the goal at the top. Many cannot see the goal, and only 1 or 2 steps are visible before them. He has learned, however, one great lesson, namely, that as he builds his own character, he is given strength to climb the steps. Hence, So doing, he pledges himself to every living thing, for they are all temple builders, building more noble structures to the glory of the universal God. The true Masonic Lodge is a mystery school, a place where candidates are taken out of the follies and foibles of the world and instructed in the mysteries of life, relationships, and the seriously, realizing that every wasted moment is a lost opportunity, and that omnipotence is gained only through earnestness and endeavor. Above all other relationships, he recognizes the universal brotherhood of every living thing. The symbol of the clasped hands, explained in the lodge, reflects his attitude towards all the world, for he is the comrade of all created things. He realizes also that his spirit is a glowing, gleaming jewel which he must enshrine within a holy temple built by the labor of his hands, the meditation of his heart, and the aspiration of his soul. Freemasonry is a philosophy which is essentially creedless. It is the truer for it. Its brothers bow to truth regardless of the bearer. They serve light instead of wrangling over the one who brings it. In this way, they prove that they are seeking to know better the will and the dictates of the invincible one. No truer religion exists than that of world comradeship and brotherhood, for the purpose of glorifying one God and building for him a temple of constructive attitude and noble character. Prologue. In the fields of chaos. The first flush of awakening life pierced the impenetrable expanse of cosmic night, turning the darkness of negation into the dim twilight of unfolding being. Silhouetted against the shadowy gateways of eternity, the lonely figure of a mystic stranger stood upon the nebulous banks of swirling substance. Robed in a shimmery blue mantle of mystery, and his head encircled by a golden crown of dazzling light, the darkness of chaos fled before the rays that poured like streams of living fire from his form divine. From some cosmos greater far than ours, this mystic visitor came, answering the call of divinity. From star to star he strode, and from world to universe he was known, yet forever concealed by the filmy garments of chaotic night. Suddenly the clouds broke, and a wondrous light descended from somewhere among the seething waves of force. It bathed this lonely form in a radiance celestial, each sparkling crystal of mist gleaming like a diamond, bathed in the living fire of the divine. In the gleaming flame of cosmic light, bordered by the dark clouds of not being, two great forms appeared, and a mighty voice thrilled eternity, each sparkling atom pulsating with the power of the Creator's word, while the great blue-robed figure bowed in awe before the footstool of his Maker, as a hand reached down from heaven, its fingers extended the benediction. Of all creation I have chosen you, and upon you my seal is placed. You are the chosen instrument of my hand, and I appoint you to be the builder of my temple. You shall raise its pillars and tile its floor. You shall ornament it with...
See what I'm talking about? We're going to listen to the whole book today, I reckon. Because we already on chapter 4. I had said 1 through 3, but we're going to do the whole book. Now you hear what he's talking about, cosmic conscious and everything. That's what we talking about nowadays. See, Freemasons and stuff that was so misunderstood. But what people just not learning, we already knew. Because I have seen his star in the east and have come to worship him.
Metals and with jewels, and you shall be the master of my workmen. In your hands I place the plans, and here on the tracing board of living substance I have impressed the plan you are to follow, tracing its every letter and angle in the fiery lines of my moving finger. Hiram Abiff, chosen builder of your father's house, up and to your work. Yonder are the fleecy clouds, the gray mists of dawn, the gleams of heavenly light, and the darkness of the sleep of creation. From these shall you build, without the sound of hammer or the voice of workmen, the temple of your God, eternal in the heavens. The swirling, ceaseless motion of negation you shall chain to grind your stones. Among these spirits of not being shall you slack your lime and lay your footings. For I have watched you through the years of your youth. I have guided you through the days of your manhood. I have weighed you in the balance, and you have not been found wanting. Therefore to you give I the glory of work, and here ordain you as the builder of my house. Unto you I give the word of the master builder. Unto you I give the tools of the craft. Unto you I give the power that has been vested in me. Be faithful unto these things. Bring them back when you have finished, and I will give you the name known to God alone. So might it be. The great light died out of the heavens. The streaming fingers of living light vanished in the misty, lonely twilight, and again covered not being with its sable mantle. Hiram Abiff again stood alone, gazing out into the endless ocean of oblivion, nothing but swirling, seething matter as far as eye could see. Then he straightened his shoulders, and taking the trestle board in his hands, and clasping to his heart the glowing word of the Master, walked slowly away, and was swallowed up in the mists of primordial dawn. How may man measure timeless eternity? Ages passed, and the lonely builder labored with his plan with only love and humility in his heart, his hand molding the darkness which he blessed while his eyes were raised above where the great light had shone down from heaven. In the divine solitude he labored, with no voice to cheer, no spirit to condemn, alone in the boundless all, with the great chill of the morning mist upon his brow, but his heart still warm with the light of the Master's word. It seemed a hopeless task. No single pair of hands could mold that darkness. No single heart, no matter how true, could be great enough to project pulsing cosmic love into the cold mist of oblivion. Though the darkness settled ever closer about him, and the misty fingers of negation twined round his being, still with divine trust the builder labored. With divine hope he laid his footings, and from the boundless clay he made the molds to cast his sacred ornaments. Slowly the building grew, and dim forms molded by the Master's hand took shape about him. 3 huge, soulless creatures had the Master fashioned, great beings which loomed like grim specters in the semi-darkness. They were 3 builders he had blessed, and now in stately file they passed before him. And Hiram held out his arms to his creation, saying, "Brothers, I have built you for your works. I have formed you to labor with me in the building of the Master's house. You are the children of my being. I have labored with you. Now labor with me for the glory of our God." But the specters laughed. Turning upon their Maker, and striking him with his own tools given him by God out of heaven, they left their Grand Master dying in the midst of his labors, broken and crushed by the threefold powers of cosmic night. As he lay bleeding at the foot of his handiwork, the martyred builder raised his eyes to the seething clouds, and his face was sweet with divine love and cosmic understanding, as he prayed unto the Master who had sent him forth. O Master of workmen, great architect of the universe, my labors are not finished. Why must they always remain undone? I have not completed the thing for which thou hast sent me into being, for my very creations have turned against me, and the tools thou gavest me have destroyed me. The children that I formed in love, in their ignorance, have murdered me. Here, Father, is the word thou gavest me, now red with my own blood. O Master, I return it to thee, for I have kept it sacred in my heart. Here are the tools, the tracing board, and the vessels I have wrought. Around me stand the ruins of my temple, which I must leave. Unto thee, O God, the divine knower of all things, I return them all, realizing that in thy good time lies the fulfillment of all things. Thou, O God, knowest our down-sitting and our uprising, and thou understandest our thoughts afar off. In thy name, Father, I have labored, and in thy cause I die, a faithful builder. The master fell back, his upturned face sweet in the last repose of death, and the light rays no longer pouring from him. The gray clouds gathered closer, as though to form a winding sheet around the body of their murdered master. Suddenly the heavens opened again, and a shaft of light bathed the form of Hiram in a glory celestial. Again the voice spoke from the heavens, where the great king sat upon the clouds of creation. He is not dead. He is asleep. Who will awaken him? His labors are not done, and in death he guards the sacred relics more closely than ever. For the word and the tracing board are his. I have given them to him. But he must remain asleep until these three who have slain him shall bring him back to life. For every wrong must be righted, and the slayers of my house, the destroyers of my temple, must labor in the place of their builder, until they raise their master from the dead. The three murderers fell on their knees and raised their hands to heaven as though to ward off the light which had disclosed their crime. O God, great is our sin, for we have slain our grand master, Hiram Abiff. Just is thy punishment, and as we have slain him, we now dedicate our lives to his resurrection. The first was our human weakness, the second our sacred duty. Be it so, answered the voice from heaven. The great light vanished, and the clouds of darkness and mist concealed the body of the murdered master. It was swallowed up in the swirling darkness which left no mark, no gravestone, to mark the place where the builder had lain. "O God!" cried the three murderers, "where shall we find our master now?" A hand reached down again from the great unseen, and a tiny lamp was handed them, whose oil flame burned silently and clearly in the darkness. "By this light shall ye seek him whom ye have slain." The three forms surrounded the light and bowed in prayer and thanksgiving for this solitary gleam which was to light the darkness of their way. From somewhere above in the regions of not being, the great voice spoke, a thundering voice that filled chaos with its sound. "He cometh forth as a flower, and is cut down. He fleeth also as a shadow, and continueth not. As the waters fail from the sea, and the flood decayeth and drieth up, so man lieth down, and riseth not again. Yet have I compassion upon the children of my creation. I administer unto them in time of trouble, and save them with an everlasting salvation. Seek ye where the broken twig lies, and the dead stick molds away, where the clouds float together, and the stones rest by the hillside. For all these mark the grave of Hiram, who has carried my will with him to the tomb. This eternal quest is yours, until ye have found your builder, until the cup giveth up its secret, until the grave giveth up its ghosts. No more shall I speak until ye have found and raised my beloved son, and have listened to the words of my messenger, and with him, as your guide, have finished the temple, which I shall then inhabit. Amen." The gray dawn still lay asleep in the arms of darkness. Out through the great mystery of not being, all was silence, unknowable. Through the misty dawn, like strange phantoms of a dream, three figures wandered over the great unknown, carrying in their hands a tiny lamp, the lamp given to them by their builder's father. Over stick and stone and cloud and star they wandered, eternally in search of a silent grave, stopping again and again to explore the depths of some mystic recess, praying for liberation from their endless search, yet bound by their vows to raise the builder they had slain, whose grave was marked by the broken twig, and whose body was laid away in the white winding sheet of death, somewhere over the brow of the eternal hill. Temple builders, you are the temple builders of the future. With your hands must be raised the domes and spires of a coming civilization. Upon the foundation you have laid, tomorrow shall build a far more noble edifice. Builders of the temple of character wherein should dwell an enlightened spirit, truers of the rock of relationship, molders of those vessels created to contain the oil of life. Up and to the task appointed. Never before in the history of men have you had the opportunity that now confronts you.
Keep your
The
lamp
world
lit.
waits for the illuminated one who shall come from between the pillars of the portico. Humility, hoodwinked and bound, seeks entrance to the temple of wisdom. Fling wide the gate, and let the worthy enter. Fling wide the gate, and let the light that is the life of men shine forth. Hasten to complete the dwelling of the Lord, that the Spirit of God may come and dwell among his people, sanctified and ordained according to his law. Chapter 1. The Eternal Quest.
Oh, shoot.
The average Mason, as well as the modern student of Masonic ideals, little realizes the cosmic obligation he takes upon himself when he begins his search for the sacred truths of nature.
Hey, that was just the introduction, y'all. So we just not getting on chapter 1, so you know this is gonna be a long one.
As they are concealed in the ancient and modern rituals.
Hey,
He must
Steve,
not
baby.
lightly regard his vows, and if he would not bring
How
upon
you doing
himself
today, love?
years and ages of suffering, he must cease to consider Freemasonry solely as a social order only a few centuries old. He must realize that the ancient mystic teachings as perpetuated in the modern rites are sacred, and the powers unseen and unrecognized mold the destiny of those who consciously and of their own free will take upon themselves the obligations of the fraternity. Freemasonry is not a material thing. It is a science of the soul. It is not a creed or doctrine, but a universal expression of the divine wisdom. The coming together of medieval guilds, or even the building of Solomon's temple, as it is understood today, has little, if anything, to do with the true origin of Freemasonry. For Masonry does not deal with personalities. In its highest sense, it is neither historical nor archaeological, but is a divine symbolic language, perpetuating under certain concrete symbols the sacred mysteries of the ancients. Only those who see in it a cosmic study, a life work, a divine inspiration to better thinking, better feeling, and better living, with the spiritual attainment of enlightenment as the end, and with the daily life of the true Mason as the means, have gained even the slightest insight into the true mysteries of the ancient rites. The age of the Masonic School is not to be calculated by hundreds or even thousands of years, for it never had any origin in the worlds of form. The world as we see it is merely an experimental laboratory in which man is laboring to build and express greater and more perfect vehicles. Into this laboratory pour myriads of rays descending from the cosmic hierarchies. These mighty globes and orbs which focus their energies upon mankind and mold its destiny do so in an orderly manner, each in its own way and place. And it is the working of these mystic hierarchies in the universe which forms the pattern around which the Masonic School has been built. For the true lodge of the Mason is the universe. Freed of limitations of creed and sect, he stands a master of all faiths, and those who take up the study of Freemasonry without realizing the depth, the beauty, and the spiritual power of its philosophy can never gain anything of permanence from their studies. The age of the mystery schools can be traced by the student back to the dawn of time, ages and eons ago, when the temple of the solar man was in the making. That was the first temple of the king, and therein were given and laid down the true mysteries of the ancient lodge. And it was the gods of creation and the spirits of the dawn who first tiled the master's lodge. The initiated brother realizes that his so-called symbols and rituals are merely blinds fabricated by the wise to perpetuate ideas incomprehensible to the average individual.
That's right.
He also realizes that few Masons of today know or appreciate the mystic meaning concealed within these rituals. With religious faith, we perpetuate the form, worshiping it instead of the life. But those who have not recognized the truth in the crystallized ritual, those who have not liberated the spiritual germ from the shell of empty words, are not Masons, regardless of their physical degrees and outward honors. In the work we are taking up, it is not the intention to dwell upon the modern concepts of the craft, but to consider Freemasonry as it really is to those who know, a great cosmic organism whose true brothers and children are tied together not by spoken oaths, but by lives so lived that they are capable of seeing through the blank wall and opening the window which is now concealed by the rubbish of materiality. When this is done, and the mysteries of the universe unfold before the aspiring candidate, then, in truth, he discovers what Freemasonry really is. Its material aspects interest him no longer, for he has unmasked the mystery school, which he is capable of recognizing only when he himself has spiritually become a member of it. Those who have examined and studied its ancient lore have no doubt that Freemasonry, like the universe itself, which is the greatest of all schools, deals with the unfolding of a threefold principle. For all the universe is governed by the same three kings who are called the builders of the Masonic temple. They are not personalities, but principles, great intelligent energies and powers, which in God, man, and the universe have charge of the molding of cosmic substance into the habitation of the living king. The temple built through the ages, first of unconscious and then conscious effort on the part of every individual who is expressing in his daily life the creative principles of these three kings. The true brother of the ancient craft realized that the completion of the temple he was building to the King of the universe was a duty, or rather a privilege, which he owed to his God, to his brother, and to himself. He knew that certain steps must be taken, and that his temple must be built according to the plan. Today, it seems that the plan is lost. However, for in the majority of cases, Freemasonry is no longer an operative art, but is merely a speculative idea.
Y'all better get these gems I'm dripping over here.
Until each brother, reading the mystery of his symbols and pondering over the beautiful allegories unfolded in his ritual, realizes that he himself contains the keys and the plans so long lost to his craft.
Then I tell y'all about them symbolisms and allegories.
And that if he would ever learn Freemasonry, he must unlock its doors with the key wrought from the base metals of his own being. True Freemasonry is esoteric. It is not a thing of this world.
That's what I studied. Esoteric and occult. That's what I'm trying to teach y'all.
All that we have here is a link, a doorway through which the student may pass into the unknown. Freemasonry has nothing to do with things of form, save that it realizes form is molded by and manifests the life it contains. Consequently, the student is seeking so to mold his
This might be too deep for y'all.
life that the form will glorify the God whose temple he is slowly building, as he awakens one by one the workmen within himself, and directs them to carry out the plan that has been given him out of heaven. So far as it is possible to discover, ancient Freemasonry and the beautiful cosmic allegories that it teaches, perpetuated through hundreds of lodges and ancient mysteries, forms the oldest of the mystery schools, and its preservation through the ages has not depended upon itself as an exoteric body of partly evolved individuals, but upon a concealed brotherhood.
See, heaven is the great lodge, and God is the great architect of the universe, my brothers.
The exoteric side of Freemasonry. All the great mystery schools have hierarchies upon the spiritual planes of nature, which are expressing themselves in this world through creeds and organizations. The true student seeks to lift himself from the exoteric body upward spiritually, until he joins the esoteric group, which, without a lodge on the physical plane of nature, is far greater than all the lodges of which it is the central fire. The spiritual instructors of humanity are forced to labor in the concrete world with things comprehensible to the concrete mind, and there man begins to comprehend the meaning of the allegories and symbols which surround his exoteric work as soon as he prepares himself to receive them. The true Mason realizes that the work of the mystery schools in the world is of an inclusive rather than an exclusive nature, and that the only lodge which is broad enough to express his ideals is one whose dome is the heavens, whose pillars are the corners of creation, whose checkerboard floor is composed of the crossing currents of human emotion, and whose altar is the human heart. Creeds cannot bind the true seeker for truth. Realizing the unity of all truth, the Mason also realizes...
See, that's what we are. That's what I told you I am. Didn't I tell you I am the truth? That's why I speak the truth, because I am the truth. Y'all better listen up.
The hierarchies laboring with him have given him, in his varying degrees, the mystic spiritual rituals of all the mystery schools in the world. And if he would fill his place in the plan, he must not enter this sacred study for what he can get out of it, but that he may learn how to serve. In Freemasonry is concealed the mystery of creation, the answer to the problem of existence, and the path the student must tread in order to join those who are really the living powers behind the thrones of modern national and international affairs. The true student realizes, most of all, that the taking of degrees does not make a man a Mason. A Mason is not appointed. He is evolved, and he must realize that the position he holds in the exoteric lodge means nothing compared to his position in the spiritual lodge of life. He must forever discard the idea that he can be told or instructed in the sacred mysteries, or that his being a member of an organization improves him in any way. He must realize that his duty is to build and evolve the sacred teachings in his own being, that nothing but his own purified being can unlock the door to the sealed libraries of human consciousness, and that his Masonic rites must eternally be speculative until he makes them operative by living the life of the mystic Mason. His karmic responsibilities increase with his opportunities. Those who are surrounded with knowledge and opportunity for self-improvement and make nothing of these opportunities are the lazy workmen who will be spiritually, if not physically, cast out of the temple of the King. The Masonic Order is not a mere social organization, but it is composed of all those who have banded themselves together to learn and apply the principles of mysticism and the occult rites. They are, or should be, philosophers, sages, and sober-minded individuals who have dedicated themselves upon the Masonic altar and vowed by all they hold dear that the world shall be better, wiser, and happier, because they have lived. Those who enter these mystic rites and pass between the pillars seeking either prestige or commercial advantage are blasphemers. And while in this world we may count them as successful.
See, that's what we say. Everybody that say that they might be Masons, yeah, on paper, but they not a true Mason in the heart.
They are the cosmic failures who have barred themselves out from the true right, whose keynote is unselfishness, and whose workers have renounced the things of earth. In ancient times, many years of preparation were required before the neophyte was permitted to enter the temple of the mysteries. In this way, the shallow, the curious, the faint of heart, and those unable to withstand the temptations of life were automatically eliminated by their inability to meet the requirements for admission. The successful candidate who did pass between the pillars entered the temple, keenly realizing his sublime opportunity, his divine obligation, and the mystic privilege which he had earned for himself through years of special preparation. Only those are truly Masons who enter their temple in reverence, who seek not the ephemeral things of life, but the treasures which are eternal, whose sole desire is to know the true mystery of the craft, that they may join as honest those who have gone before as builders of the universal temple. The Masonic ritual is not a ceremony, but a life to be lived. Those alone are truly Masons who, dedicating their lives and their fortunes upon the altar of the living flame, undertake the construction of the one universal building of which they are the workmen, and their God the living architect. When we have Masons like this, the craft will again be operative. The flaming triangle will shine forth with greater luster. The dead builder will rise from his tomb, and the lost word, so long concealed from the profane, will blaze forth again with the power that makes all things new. In the pages that follow have been set down a number of thoughts for the study and consideration of temple builders, craftsmen and artisans alike. They are the keys which, if only read, will leave the student still in ignorance, but, if lived, will change the speculative masonry of today into the operative masonry of tomorrow, when each builder, realizing his own place, will see things which he never saw before, not because they were not there, but because he was blind. And there are none so blind as those who will not see. Thoughtlessness. The noblest tool of the Mason is his mind, but its value is measured by the use made of it. Thoughtful in all things, the aspiring candidate to divine wisdom attains reality in sincere desire, in meditation, and in silence. Let the keynote of the craft and of the ritual be written in blazing letters. Think of me. What is the meaning of this mystic maze of symbols, rites, and rituals? Think. What does life mean, with the crisscrossings of human relationship, the endless pageantry of qualities masquerading in a carnival of fools? Think. What is the plan behind it all, and who the planner? Where dwells the great architect, and what is the tracing board upon which he designs? Think. What is the human soul, and why the endless yearning to ends unknown along pathways where each must wander unaccompanied? Why mind? Why soul? Why spirit? And in truth, why anything? Think. Is there an answer? If so, where will the truth be found? Think, brothers of the craft, think deeply. For if truth exists, you have it. And if truth be within the reach of living creature, what other goal is worth the struggle? Chapter 2. The Candidate. There comes a time in the growth of every living individual thing when it realizes with dawning consciousness that it is a prisoner. While apparently free to move and have its being, the struggling life cognizes through ever greater vehicles its own limitations. It is at this point that man cries out with greater insistence to be liberated from the binding ties which, though invisible to mortal eyes, still chain him with bonds far more terrible than those of any physical prison. Many have read the story of the prisoner of Chillon, who paced back and forth in the narrow confines of his prison cell, while the blue waters rolled ceaselessly above his head, and the only sound that broke the stillness of his eternal night was the constant swishing and lapping of the waves. We pity the prisoner in his physical tomb, and we are sad at heart, for we know how life loves liberty. But there is one prisoner whose plight is far worse than those of earth. He has not even the narrow confines of a prison cell around him. He cannot pace ceaselessly to and fro and wear ruts in the cobblestones of his dungeon floor. The eternal prisoner is life incarnate within the dark stone walls of matter, with not a single ray to brighten the blackness of his fate. He fights eternally, praying in the dark confines of gloomy walls for light and opportunity. This is the eternal prisoner, who, through the ceaseless ages of cosmic unfoldment, through forms unnumbered and species now unknown, strives eternally to liberate himself and gain self-conscious expression. the birthright of every created thing. He awaits the day when, standing upon the rocks that now form his shapeless tomb, he may raise his arms to heaven, bathed in the sunlight of spiritual freedom, free to join the sparkling atoms and dancing light beings released from the bonds of prison wall and tomb. Around life, that wondrous germ in the heart of every living thing, that sacred prisoner in his gloomy cell, that master builder laid away in the grave of matter, has been built the wondrous legend of the Holy Sepulcher. Under allegories unnumbered, the mystic philosophers of the ages have perpetuated this wonderful story, and among the craft masons it forms the mystic ritual of Hiram, the master builder, murdered in his temple by the very builders who should have served him as he labored to perfect the dwelling place of his God. Matter is the tomb. It is the dead wall of substance not yet awakened into the pulsating energies of spirit. It exists in many degrees and forms, not only in the chemical elements which form the solids of our universe, but in finer and more subtle substances. These, though expressing through emotion and thought, are still beings of the world of form. These substances form the great cross of matter, which opposes the growth of all things, and by opposition makes all growth possible. It is the great cross of hydrogen, nitrogen, oxygen, and carbon, upon which even the life germ in protoplasm is crucified and suspended in agony. These substances are incapable of giving it adequate expression. The spirit within cries out for freedom, freedom to be, to express, to manifest its true place in the great plan of cosmic unfoldment. It is this great yearning within the heart of man which sends him slowly onward toward the gate of the temple. It is this inner urge for greater understanding and greater light which brought into being, through the law of necessity, the great cosmic Masonic lodge, dedicated to those seeking union with the powers of light, that their prison walls might be removed. This shell cannot be discarded. It must be raised into union with the life. Each dead, crystallized atom in the human body must be set vibrating and spinning to a higher rate of consciousness. Through purification, through knowledge, and through service to his fellow man, the candidate sequentially unfolds these mystic properties, building better and more perfect bodies through which his higher life secures even greater manifestation. The expression of man through constructive thought, emotion, and action liberates the higher nature from bodies which in their crystallized states are incapable of giving him his natural opportunities. In Freemasonry, this crystallized substance of matter is called the grave, and represents the Holy Sepulcher. This is the grave within which the lost builder lies, and with him are the plans of the temple and the Master's word. And it is this builder, our Grand Master, whom we must seek and raise from the dead. This noble Son of Light cries out to us in every expression of matter. Every stick and stone marks his resting place, and the sprig of acacia promises that through the long winter of spiritual darkness, when the sun does not shine for man, this light still awaits the day of liberation, when each one of us shall raise him by the grip of the Grand Master's true grip of a Master Mason. We cannot hear this voice that calls eternally, but we feel its inner urge. A great unknown something pulls at our heartstrings. As the ages roll by, the deep desire to be greater, to live better, and to think God's thoughts builds within ourselves the qualifications of a candidate who, when asked why he takes the path, would truly answer if he knew mentally the things he feels. I hear a voice that cries out to me from flora and fauna, from the stones, from the clouds, from the very heaven itself. Each fiery atom spinning and twisting in cosmos cries out to me with the voice of my master. I can hear Hiram Abiff, my Grand Master, crying out in his agony, the agony of life hidden within the darkness of its prison walls, seeking for the expression which I have denied it, laboring to bring closer the day of its liberation. And I have learned to know that I am responsible for those walls. My daily actions are the things which, as ruffians and traitors, are murdering my God. There are many legends of the Holy Sepulcher which, for so many centuries, had been in the hands of the infidel, and which the Christian worlds sought to retake in the days of the Crusades. Few Masons realize that this Holy Sepulcher, or tomb, is in reality negation and crystallization, matter that has sealed within itself the spirit of light, which must remain in darkness until the growth of each individual being gives it walls of glowing gold and changes its stones into windows. As we develop better and better vehicles of expression, these walls slowly expand until at last spirit rises triumphant from its tomb, and blessing the very walls that confined it, raises them to union with itself. We may first consider the murderers of Hiram. These three ruffians who, when the builder seeks to leave his temple, strike him with the tools of his own craft until finally they slay him and bring the temple down in destruction upon their own heads, symbolize the three expressions of our own lower natures, which are in truth the murderers of the good within ourselves. These three may be called thought, desire, and action. When purified and transmuted, they are three glorious avenues through which may manifest the great life power of the three kings, the glowing builders of the cosmic lodge, manifesting in this world as spiritual thought, constructive emotion, and useful daily labor, in the various places and positions where we find ourselves while carrying on the Master's work. These three form the flaming triangle which glorifies every living Mason, but when crystallized and perverted, they form a triangular prism through which the light cannot shine, and the life is forced to languish in the dim darkness of despair, until man himself, through his higher understanding, liberates the energies and powers which are indeed the builders and glorifiers of his Father's house. Now let us consider how these three fiery kings of the dawn became, through perversion of their manifestation by man, the ruffians who murdered Hiram, the energizing powers of cosmos which course through the blood of every living being, seeking to beautify and perfect the temple they would build according to the plan laid down on the tracing board by the master architect of the universe. First in the mind is one of the three kings, or rather, we shall say a channel through which he manifests. For King Solomon is the power of mind which, perverted, becomes a destroyer who tears down with the very powers which nourish and build. The right application of thought, when seeking the answer to the cosmic problem of destiny, liberates man's spirit, which soars above the concrete through that wonderful power of mind, with its dreams and its ideals. When man's thoughts rise upon the wings of aspiration, when he pushes back the darkness with the strength of reason and logic, then, indeed, the builder is liberated from his dungeon, and the light pours in, bathing him with life and power. This light enables us to seek more clearly the mystery of creation, and to find with greater certainty our place in the great plan. For, as man unfolds his bodies, he gains talents with which he can explore the mysteries of nature and search for the hidden workings of the divine. Through these powers, the builder is liberated, and his consciousness goes forth conquering and to conquer. These higher ideals, these spiritual concepts, these altruistic, philanthropic, educative applications of thought power glorify the builder, for they give the power of expression, and those who can express themselves are free. When man can mold his thoughts, his emotions, and his actions into faithful expressions of his highest ideals, then liberty is his. For ignorance is the darkness of chaos, and knowledge is the light of cosmos. In spite of the fact that many of us live apparently to gratify the desires of the body and as servants of the lower nature, still there is within each of us a power which may remain latent for a great length of time. This power lives eternities, perhaps, and yet at some time during our growth there comes a great yearning for freedom, When, having discovered that the pleasures of sense gratification are eternally elusive and unsatisfying, we make an examination of ourselves, and begin to realize that there are greater reasons for our being. It is sometimes reason, sometimes suffering, sometimes a great desire to be helpful, that brings out the first latent powers which show that one long wandering in the darkness is about to take the path that leads to light. Having lived life in all its experiences, he has learned to realize that all the manifestations of being, all the various experiences through which he passes, are steps leading in one direction, that consciously or unconsciously, all souls are being led to the portico of the temple, where, for the first time, they see and realize the glory of divinity. It is then that they understand the age-old allegory of the martyred builder, and feel his power within themselves crying out from the prison of materiality. Nothing else seems worthwhile, and regardless of cost, suffering, or the taunts of the world, the candidate slowly ascends the steps that lead to the temple eternal. The reason that governs cosmos he does not know. The laws which mold his being he does not realize. But he does know that somewhere behind the veil of human ignorance there is an eternal light toward which, step by step, he must labor. With his eyes fixed on the heavens above and his hands clasped in prayer, he passes slowly as a candidate up the steps, in fear and trembling, yet with a divine realization of good, he raps on the door and awaits in silence the answer from within. Chapter 3. The Entered Apprentice. There are 3 grand steps in the unfoldment of the human soul before it completes the dwelling place of the spirit. These have been caged respectively youth, manhood, and old age, or, as the Mason would say, the entered apprentice, the fellow craft, and the master builder. All life passes through these 3 grand stages of human consciousness. They can be listed as the man on the outside looking in, the man going in, and the man inside. The path of human life is governed, as all things are, by the laws of analogy, and as at birth we start our pilgrimage through youth, manhood, and old age, so the spiritual consciousness of man in his cosmic path of unfoldment passes from unconsciousness to perfect consciousness in the grand lodge of the universe. Before the initiation of the entered apprentice degree can be properly understood and appreciated, certain requirements must be considered, not merely those of the physical world, but also those of the spiritual world. The Mason must realize that his true initiation is a spiritual and not a physical ritual, and that his initiation into the living temple of the spiritual hierarchy regulating Freemasonry may not occur until years after he has taken the physical degree, or spiritually he may be a Grand Master before he comes into the world. There are probably few instances in the history of Freemasonry where the spiritual ordination of the aspiring seeker took place at the same time as the physical initiation, because the true initiation depends upon the cultivation of certain soul qualities, an individual and personal matter which is left entirely to the volition of the mystic Mason, and which he must carry out in silence and alone. The court of the tabernacle of the ancient Jews was divided into 3 parts: the outer court, the holy place, and the most holy of holies. These 3 divisions represent the 3 grand divisions of human consciousness. The degree of entered apprentice is acquired when the student signifies his intention to take the rough ashlar, which he cuts from the quarry, and prepares for the truing of the fellow craft. In other words, the first degree is really one of preparation. It is a material step dealing with material things, for all spiritual life must be raised upon a material foundation. 7 is the number of the entered apprentice as it relates to the 7 liberal arts and sciences, and these are the powers with which the entered apprentice must labor before he is worthy to go onward into the more elevated and advanced degrees. They are much mistaken who believe that they can reach the spiritual planes of nature without first passing through and molding matter into the expression of spiritual power. For the first stage in the growth of a Master Mason is mastery of the concrete conditions of life and the developments of sense centers, which will later become channels for the expression of spiritual truths. All growth is a gradual procedure carried on in an orderly, masterly way, as exemplified by the opening and closing of a lodge. The universe is divided into planes, and these planes are divided from each other by the rates of vibration which pass through them. As the spiritual consciousness progresses through the chain, the lower lose connection with it when it has raised itself above their level, until finally only the Grand Masters are capable of remaining in session, and unknown even to the Master Mason, it finally passes back again to the spiritual hierarchy from which it came. Action is the keynote of the Entered Apprentice Lodge. All growth is the result of exercise and the intensifying of vibratory rates. It is through exercise that the muscles of the human body are strengthened. It is through the 7 liberal arts and sciences that the human mind receives certain impulses which, in turn, stimulate internal centers of consciousness. These centers of consciousness, through still greater development, will later give fuller expression to these inner powers. But the entered apprentice has for his first duty the awakening of these powers, and, like the youth of whom he is a symbol, his ideals and labors must be tied closely to concrete things. For him, both points of the compasses are under the square. For him, the reasons which manifest through the heart and mind, the 2 polarities of expression, are darkened and concealed beneath the square which measures the block of bodies. He knows not the reason why. His work is to follow the directions of those whose knowledge is greater than his own. But as the result of the application of energies, through action and reaction, he slowly builds and evolves the powers of discrimination and the strength of character which mark the fellow craft degree. It is obvious that the rough ashlar symbolizes the body. It also represents cosmic root substance, which is taken out of the quarry of the universe by the first expressions of intelligence and molded by them into ever finer and more perfect lines, until finally it becomes the perfect stone for the builder's temple. How can emotion manifest save through form? How can mind manifest until the intricately evolved brain cells of matter have raised their organic quality to form the groundwork upon which other things may be based? All students of human nature realize that every expression of man depends upon organic quality, that in every living thing this differs, and that the fineness of this matter is the certain indication of growth, mental, physical, or spiritual. True to the doctrines of his craft, the entered apprentice must beautify his temple. He must build within himself by his actions, by the power of his hand and the tools of his craft, certain qualities which make possible his initiation into the higher degrees of the spiritual lodge. We know that the cube block is symbolic of the tomb. It is also well known that the entered apprentice is incapable of rolling away the stone or of transmuting it into a greater or higher thing. But it is his privilege to purify and glorify that stone, and begin the great work of preparing it for the temple of his king. Few realize that since the universe is made up of individuals in various stages of development, responsibility is consequently individual, and everything which man wishes to gain, he must himself build and maintain. If he is to use his finer bodies for the purpose for which they were intended, he must treat them well, that they may be good and faithful servants in the great work he is preparing for. The quarries represent the limitless powers of natural resources. They are symbolic of the practically endless field of human opportunity. They symbolize the cosmic substances from which man must gather the stones for his temple. At this stage in his growth, the entered apprentice is privileged to gather the stones which he wishes to true during his progress through the lodge. For at this point, he symbolizes the youth who is choosing his life work. He represents the human ego, who, in the dawn of time, gathered many blocks and cubes and broken stones from the great quarry. These rough and broken stones, that as yet will not fit into anything, are the partially evolved powers and senses with which he labors. In the first state, he must gather these materials, and those who have not gathered them can never true them. During the involuntary period of human consciousness, the entered apprentice in the Great Lodge was man, who labored with these rough blocks, seeking the tools and the power with which to true them. As he evolves down through the ages, he gains the tools, and cosmically passes on to the degree of fellow craft, where he trues his ashlar in harmony with the plans upon the master's tracing board. This rough, uncut ashlar has 3 dimensions, representative of the 3 ruffians who at this stage are destroyers of the 4th dimensional life concealed within the ugly, ill-shaped stone. The lost key of the entered apprentice is service. Why, he may not ask. When, he does not know. His work is to do, to act, to express himself in some way, constructively if possible, but destructively rather than not at all. Without action, he loses his great work. Without tools, which symbolize the body, he cannot act in an organized manner. Consequently, it is necessary to master the arts and sciences which place in his hands intelligent tools for the expression of energy. Beauty is the keynote to his ideal. With his concrete ideals, he must beautify all with which he comes in contact, so that the works of his hand may be acceptable in the eyes of the great architect of the universe. His daily life, in home, business, and society, together with the realization of the fundamental unity of each with all, form the base upon which the aspiring candidate may raise a greater superstructure. In truth, he must live the life, the result of which is the purification of his body, so that the more attenuated forces of the higher degrees may express themselves through the finer sensitivity of the receiving pole within himself. When he reaches this stage in his growth, he is spiritually worthy to consider advancement into higher degree. This advancement is not the result of election or ballot, but is an automatic process in which, having sensitized his consciousness by his life, he thereby attunes himself to the next succeeding plane of expression. All initiation is the result of adjustments of the evolving life to the physical, emotional, and mental planes of consciousness through which it passes. We may now consider the spiritual requirements of one who feels that he would mystically correlate himself with that great spiritual fraternity, which, concealed behind the exoteric rite, forms the living power of the entered apprentice lodge. 1. It is essential that the entered apprentice should have studied sufficiently the subject of anatomy to have at least a general idea of the physical body, for the entire degree is based upon the mystery of form. The human body is the highest manifestation of form which he is capable of analyzing. Consequently, he must devote himself to the study of his own being and its mysteries and complexities. 2. The entered apprentice must realize that his body is the living temple of the living God, and treat it accordingly. For when he abuses or mistreats it, he breaks the sacred obligations which he must assume before he can ever hope to understand the true mysteries of the craft. The breaking of his pact with the higher life evolving within himself unfailingly invokes the retributive agencies of nature. 3. He must study the problem of the maintenance of bodies through food, clothing, breathing, and other necessities, as all of these are important steps in the entered apprentice lodge. Those who eat immoderately, dress improperly, and use only about 1/3 of their lung capacity can never have the physical efficiency necessary for the fullest expression of the higher life. 4. He must grow physically and in the expression of concrete things. Human relationships must be idealized at this time, and he must seek to unfold all unselfish qualities which are necessary for the harmonious working of the Mason and his fellow men on the physical plane of nature. 5. He must seek to round off all inequalities. He can best do this by balancing his mental and physical organisms through the application and study of the 7 liberal arts and sciences. Until he is relatively master of these principles on the highest plane within his own being, he cannot hope spiritually to attract to himself, through the qualities of his own character, the life-giving ray of the fellow craft. When he reaches this point, however, he is spiritually ready to hope for membership in a more advanced degree. The Mason must realize that his innermost motives are the index of his real self, and those who allow social position, financial, or business considerations, or selfish and materialistic ideals to lead them into the Masonic Brotherhood have thereby automatically separated themselves from the craft. They can never do any harm to Freemasonry by joining because they cannot get in. Ensconced within the lodge, they may feel that they have deceived the Grand Master of the universe. But when the spiritual lodge meets to carry on the true work of the craft, they are disqualified and absent. Watch fobs, lapel badges, and other insignia do not make Masons.
That's right.
Neither does the ritual ordain them. Masons are evolved through the self-conscious effort to live up to the highest ideals within themselves.
That's right.
Their lives are the sole insignia of their rank, greater by far than any visible, tangible credential. Bearing this in mind, it is possible for the unselfish, aspiring soul to become spiritually and liberally vouched for by the centers of consciousness as an entered apprentice. It means he has taken the first grand step on the path of personal liberation. He is now symbolized as the child with the smiling face, for with the simplicity of a child, he places himself under the protection of his great spiritual father, willing and glad to obey each of his commands. Having reached this point, and having done the best it was possible for him to do, he is in position to hope that the powers that be, moving in their mysterious manner, may find him worthy to undertake the second great step in spiritual liberation. Chapter 4. The Fellow Craft. Life manifests not only through action on the physical plane, but through human emotion and sentiment. This is the type of energy taken up by the student when he starts his labors in the fellow craft. From youth, with its smiling face, he passes on to the greater responsibilities of manhood. On the second step of the temple stands a soldier, dressed in shining armor, but his sword is sheathed, and a book is in his hand. He is symbolic of strength, the energy of Mars, and the wonderful step in spiritual unfoldment which we know as fellow craft. Through each of us course the fiery rays of human emotion, a great seething cauldron of power behind each expression of human energy. Like spirited horses chafing at the bit, like hounds eager for the chase, the emotional powers cannot be held in check, but break the walls of restraint and pour forth as fiery expressions of dynamic energy. This great principle of emotion we know as the second murderer of Hiram. Through the perversion of human emotions, there comes into the world untold sorrow, which, through reaction, manifests in the mental and physical bodies. It is strange how divine powers may become perverted until each expression and urge becomes a ruffian and a murderer. The divine compassion of the gods manifests in this world of form very differently than in the realms of light. Divine compassion is energized by the same influxes as mortal passions and the lusts of earth. The spiritual light rays of cosmos, the fire princes of the dawn, which seethe and surge through the unregenerate man, are the impulses which he perverts to murder and hate. The ceaseless power of chaos, the seething pinwheel spirals of perpetual motion, whose majestic cadences are the music of the spheres, are energized by the same great power that man uses to destroy the highest and best. The same mystic power that keeps the planets in their orbits around the solar body, the same energy that keeps each electron spinning and whirling, the same energy that is building the temple of God, is now a merciless slave driver, which, unmastered and uncurbed, strikes the compassionate one and sends him reeling backward into the darkness of his prison. Man does not listen to that little voice which speaks to him in ever-loving, ever-sorrowful tones. This voice speaks of the peace accompanying the constructive application of energy which he must chain if he would master the powers of creation. How long will it take King Hiram of Tyre, the warrior on the second step, symbolic of the fellow craft of the Cosmic Lodge, to teach mankind the lessons of self-mastery. The teacher can only do it as he daily depicts the miseries which are the result of uncurbed appetites. The strength of man was not given to be used destructively, but that he might build a temple worthy to be the dwelling place of the great architect of the universe. God is glorifying himself through the individualized portions of himself, and is slowly teaching these individualized portions to understand and glorify the whole. The day has come when fellow craftsmen must know and apply their knowledge. The lost key to their grade is the mastery of emotion, which places the energy of the universe at their disposal. Man can only expect to be entrusted with great power by proving his ability to use it constructively and selflessly. When the Mason learns that the key to the warrior on the block is the proper application of the dynamo of living power, he has learned the mystery of his craft. The seething energies of Lucifer are in his hands, and before he may step onward and upward, he must prove his ability to properly apply energy. He must follow in the footsteps of his forefather.
See how we always talk about energy? Because we are energy. But I will have to stop this for now, and I'll come back with part 2 a little later on because I got to handle some business. My phone keep ringing off the hook, and I need to talk to my attorney about some things. That's who's calling me. And then my brother just called me too from Runner Robin, so let me see what's going on with them. And I'll get back with y'all on part 2 a little later on. I'll show you my loves. If y'all enjoyed this content, please leave me a comment down in the box below. Like, share, and subscribe. Okay, loves?